Alright folks, how's it going? This is Cams Campbell, your host for the Dr. Zhivago read-along, starting last Wednesday. So this is Friday the 3rd. We started on the 1st of April. We're running through to the end of July, and I just wanted to do a wee introduction kind of thing, just to let you know how the land lies and what my plans are. So, we've got Dr. Zhivago. This is the Hayward Harari translation. This was my wife's copy, actually, and it's such a delight to go through because it's got her annotations in it from 30 plus years ago. Look at that, is that not delightful? So, the idea is that we read one chapter a week and we finish at the end of July. So, the chapters are maybe ranging from about 20 pages up to 40 pages is the longest. So it's a nice slow read, 40 pages max per week. I read the book in March, cover to cover, for my first time, would you believe? This was a novel written by Boris Pasternak, kind of in secret. Boris himself was a poet before he was a novelist, and some argue that this is a vehicle simply for his poetry, and we get into that a little bit, at least I hope to. So the novel was published in 1957 in Italy and came out in English in 1958, which is this translation here, the Max Hayward and Harari translation. Pasternak was then awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature, which he was coerced into rejecting by the powers that be. So that's a bit of the background. I'm going to learn a whole lot more about the background in this amazing book here, The Zhivago Affair, the Kremlin, the CIA, and the battle over a forbidden book. So this I found through a recommendation on a Goodreads review, and this is something I'm planning to read along with this one here, Dr. Zhivago, A Critical Companion, edited by Edith W. Close, and these are great little companions. You'll see I've started it, and this is one of the things I want to talk about because I've just watched a fantastic interview, or not an interview, let's call it a conversation, between Simon Hazel, the OG of slow reads on Substack, and Kristine Benoit de Bechovitz, whose Substack is called The Reflective Eye. And it was a fantastic conversation. Simon's the OG of Substack book reads. Kristine is a younger she's an art reviewer or an art historian. And she's also interested in literature and philosophy and a whole lot of other things. And it was fascinating to get their takes on what it's like being a book leader or an art critic, I don't know what you would call it, a Substack writer, let's call it that. And Simon said that he's not an expert on the books that he's slow reading. What he's providing is a space for discussion to happen in the comments. I love to hear that because that's how I feel as well. Although I do have some credentials when it comes to Russian literature, having studied it at university and got a degree, etc., etc., I'm also not an academic. I'm just a guy that enjoys these books and wants to introduce them to other people and have conversations about them. So part of doing this for me with my kind of, what would you call it, pathologies, or I don't know, ADHD, autism, these neurodiverse things that drive my brain in interesting and weird ways, mean that when I'm creating posts and videos and stuff, there's part of me that feels like I have to be the biggest expert in the world in order to be qualified to do this. And this is something I'm trying to get over, because that's not the case at all. And I want to train my brain into not thinking that way. So to have heard Simon say that meant a lot. And it makes me feel comfortable coming on here to talk about books that I've only just read for the first time, you know. And the other thing that came up in the conversation was when Kristine talked about reading around the art or the literature or whatever it might be as part of the process of creating written work on Substack or making videos for YouTube. It can start to burn one out. And I have experienced that with some of the read-alongs that I've been doing because of the first thing that I talked about, where I feel that I need to be an expert in order to be qualified to bring new people into these wonderful books, which isn't true, and that's, you know, what I'm trying to trick my brain into believing. It also means that I don't have to read every single piece of criticism in order to lead a good book group. I just want to provide space for conversations. I want to read the books myself. I want to study them as much as time will permit, and then put it out there and share it with you. So these are the two books I've got, kind of peripheral reading, which I will read. You know, I've allowed myself more time with this than I did with The Master and Margarita, to give myself time to read around the books. But there's also life, you know, and we're planning to move house. We've got family, we've got chores, we've got, you know, life stuff. So I need to make space for that as well, so that I don't start to feel overwhelmed and burnt out. I hope this all makes sense to you. I'm kind of making this as much for me as for you, to talk my way into to making the videos I want to make and putting stuff out that isn't too highbrow and expert. It's just a conversation, you know. And what came up with this, as I was reading these pages, I found it to be very dry and academic and a bit highbrow. And if I'm tired when I read this kind of thing, it doesn't go in at all, and I start to get annoyed. And, you know, I can tell I'm annoyed when I start to score out Oxford commas in pencil. That's a sign that I don't have the right energy level or mood to be taking this stuff in. So, yeah, I want to take this in as well as I can and share what I'm learning, and have it not be dry and academic, have it be more, well, what's the opposite of dry? Wet? Can you have wet writing? I don't know, but to make it more accessible and entertaining? I don't know if that's the right word. I have a feeling that this book is going to be more interesting for me because, you know, going into the whole history of the book and the Nobel Prize and the times in which the author lived, rather than looking at particular academic things that I don't really necessarily understand. It sounds too much like university. Like this bit here where it says, in terms of its discursive and genre style, Dr. Zhivago is about the tension between the lyric and the epic, in which the lyric impulse reasserts itself with a vengeance. And I've written, what does this mean? Lyric? Epic? These are terms I feel that I should know with a degree in literature, but that's what I mean. That's kind of what I'm talking about. So that's an introduction to where my head is at. What I want to do going forward is more of this kind of informal chat. I'll continue in the way that I did with The Master and Margarita, with weekly posts. Hopefully I'll find artwork to go along with it, but I've got a feeling that this won't be as rich a novel as The Master and Margarita was for that. But hopefully I'll find something that I can share, and yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the novel again and seeing what comes up for me, and then hearing what comes up for you. That's really the kind of main thrust of this. And if I can provide a space for that, where you can even have conversations amongst yourselves without me necessarily having to be there. You know, that would be very, very cool. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts. What are you expecting going into this? What do you know about the novel already, if anything? What made you decide to join this read-along? You know, it's not the most well-known of Russian classics. 20th century literature gets gets shorter shrift, shall we say, than 19th century Russian literature. You know, your big hitters, Anna Karenina, War and Peace, Crime and Punishment, The Idiot. There's a whole load of Russian classics that get a lot more traction on YouTube and in the book group space than the 20th century. The Master and Margarita is a great example of that, and I had the best time doing that novel on these platforms. So I'll leave it there. I'll publish this and see how we do, and I look forward to sharing this great novel with you as we head into Russia in the early 20th century. See you there. Пока.